There's just no way.
Don't have enough to eat.
Okay. Yo guys, what is up? Max for Diablo 4 video, and today we're talking about all of the changes in the new patch notes to the Barbarian. Now, there are a lot of patch notes, a lot of changes, and I wanted to make multiple videos because there's no way I could cover all the patch notes in one video. So this video, we're just going to specifically talking about what changed to the Barbarian and showing off gameplay of these changes, my opinions on the nerfs and the buffs, and what I think is going to be the best build for Season 1. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. So right off the bat, one of the biggest changes, as expected, was a big buff to Upheaval. It wasn't as big as a buff as I was expecting, but it's still a pretty sizable buff. They buffed Upheaval by 20%, so that's going to be looking good. Furious Upheaval was the skill that was stacking up to 80% increased damage for Upheaval. They nerfed it down to 30%, and now they're buffing it back up to 50%. They're increasing the amount of fury we get from using the tactical ground stomp. That's kind of nice for leveling. This is a big one. They're buffing Death Blow's bonus damage that it deals to bosses up to 150%. Still really nice. I don't think this is going to be enough to like one-shot a boss exactly, but it'll probably get relatively close. And then they buffed a bunch of things with Rupture, which is also looking nice. Now, they made some weird changes to the passives. They nerfed Hamstring, so now that it only slows healthy enemies, meaning that the enemies need to be above 80% of their health to actually get slowed by Hamstring, but they did give us a higher buff value at base, and we can now like slow enemies up to 60%, but once again, only while they're healthy, which is weird. And then they nerfed the bleeding damage bonus from cut to the bone. Nerf here, just not too much here, but this is going at max from 18% to 15%. And then they're also got a lot of changes for our aspects. The aspect changes listed here are all kind of buffs to flat damage values that weren't being used a lot, so I haven't gotten a chance to test all of these things, but looking good on some buffs there. They did drastically change how Gore's Devastating Grips works. So Gore's Devastating Grips were originally something that you could trigger on your own. You would spin and you would hold that spin until you're ready to hit an elite or a target that you want to explode on. Now it just automatically explodes every 2 seconds or after it ends, and its damage cap has been removed. However, it is a force explosion every 2 seconds. So showing on screen right now is some gameplay with Gore's, and from my just like initial testing, they feel fine. Like I still feel a little bit underpowered in my opinion for like an end game unique for Whirlwind. I think maybe for speed clearing and clearing content as fast as possible, it could be a nice quality of life item to have. But I think for like pushing higher nightmares and doing harder content, those crit chance values that you can roll on normal gauntlets are still probably going to outweigh the Gore explosion. So interesting change there. And then they also boosted or buffed the Fields of Crimson unique damage bonus from 10% to 15%. Now some even bigger changes come in the form of gameplay changes to the Barbarian. So first off, one of the big things that they fixed is the Berserk Ripping Skullbreaker and Anebia aspects, allowing to stack up to deal extreme amounts of damage. This was the like undecillion damage that Rob hit. That got nerfed already, which was pretty fast. And they also nerfed or fixed Hammer of the Ancients via the aspect of the Ancestral Echoes. This aspect was letting your Hammer of the Ancients echo outwards and deal significantly more damage on the echo towards enemies that weren't hit by the initial hit. I was hitting pretty consistently 30 to 40 millions with Hammer of the Ancients on testing. Now playing with the new changes, I'm hitting around 5 to 6 million with Hammer of the Ancients, with high hits being in the 7 millions versus high hits being in the 60 millions before. Hammer of the Ancients feels pretty terrible to play right now. They didn't buff it in any other way either. Like, it's not like they fixed this and then buffed the like base value. So an ability hitting for like a few million is still really good. Like, that's a good thing. But I'm surprised that they nerfed it this hard and then didn't actually give it any other like quality of life or buffs to like make up for how much worse it currently feels. There also were some really big indirect nerfs to the Barbarian. The Barbarian, one of the things that they do best is stack up damage multipliers. The Barbarian is the only class that can hold 4 weapons, and when you're holding 4 weapons, you get 4 stat sticks, and all those stat sticks are going to contribute a lot to your damage. However, they nerfed stat sticks like crazy. They nerfed a lot of the damage that you get on item affixes. For example, they nerfed the strength basically that you can get on weapons by half. They nerfed the vulnerable damage that rolls on weapons by 40%. They nerfed critical strike damage that rolls on weapons by 17%. They nerfed the inherent crit damage on swords by over 50%, which means that using swords as your weapons for your whirlwind might not even be like a priority anymore. Crit damage is still really nice to have, but a 50% nerf to crit damage on swords is pretty crazy. And another big change that they made is they nerfed the disobedience aspect. Now, obviously, this affects a lot of classes, but the Barbarian, trying to be a tanky class who kind of always has to be in melee range, you're going to feel that nerf to disobedience pretty hard. The disobedience stacks were reduced from 100 to 60%, and the bonus armor that you get from the disobedience aspect went from 50% to 30%. Not only that, but they nerfed damage reduction, and they nerfed a lot of things that keep us alive. So, for example, total armor, they've reduced by 30%. That affix has gone down. Damage reduction from close enemies reduced by 20%. Damage reduction from enemies, bleeding enemies, reduced by 25%. Damage reduction while fortified, they reduced by 25%. A lot of the things that we're using to survive, and granted, a lot of things that other classes were using to survive has been nerfed, but the Barbarian's going to get hit by that particularly hard because the Barbarian doesn't really have as much options to avoid damage as some of these other classes, because we kind of always need to be up close and in personal with enemies. One other thing I forgot to mention in terms of nerfs is that they also nerfed cooldown reduction, and the Barbarian is one of the most cooldown reliant classes. They nerfed cooldown reduction by about 30%, and so getting those CDs and your shouts to be 100% uptime is going to be even harder than it was before. Surprised by that change as well. Obviously, that is a global change to all characters, but the Barbarian already had a bunch of nerfs to their cooldown prior to this, so it's an even bigger nerf to Barbarian's cooldown. Now, this all sounds a lot like doom and gloom for the Barbarian. What is the saving grace? Why would you play a Barbarian in this coming season with all of these nerfs? And there's a few saving graces, and those, in my opinion, come in the form of the new hearts that are going to be dropping for all characters. Now, there are some crazy new heart effects. These are the new, like, abilities or powers that you can slot into your jewelry. And the first one that I want to talk to you guys about is the Barber. Critical strikes and all subsequent damage within 2 to 4 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies. Stored damage is increased by 10% per second. This is going to work wonderfully on Whirlwind, because Whirlwind, one, you can get to 100% crit chance, so that is going to be stacking up damage on all your targets, and it's going to give you a ton of AoE clear. And they didn't touch any of the crit chance aspects, so we are still going to be able to stack up 100% crit chance on Whirlwind, and that Whirlwind damage is going to be erupting and blowing up whole packs of enemies, and Whirlwind attacks very, very quickly, so that subsequent damage is also going to be really good. For example, on like a pulverized build where you hit there, you're not doing a lot of subsequent damage, you're kind of doing like 1 or 2 pulverizes, versus Whirlwind, you're going to be hitting a lot very quickly and guaranteeing crits. So this sounds really, really neat on a Whirlwind build. On top of that, they had some things where like your crits can like send lightning bolts, which sounds really cool. The Barbarian got a new unique that is going to allow us to freeze enemies and also deal like cold damage to them, which is going to be really interesting. Could work really well on Whirlwind with that, where you're freezing exploding packs. And then we also got some Barbarian specific hearts. This one, Focus Rage, seems all right. After spending 100 to 60 Fury within 2 seconds, your next non-basic skills critical strike chance is increased by 20 to 30%. I could see this being nice with like a Death Blow setup. Resurgent Life, while below 40 to 60% life, you receive more healing from all sources. punishing speed. Your skills have a 20 to 30% chance to knock down all enemies when the skill's attack speed is higher than 25 or 35 to 20%. And then ignoring pain. I think this is going to be pretty nice for just staying alive. Incoming damage has a 5 to 15% chance of being ignored, and instead you heal for 17 to 68. We are going to be significantly more squishy in this season, so the fact that we're getting a big aspect to straight up ignore damage and heal us seems quite nice. Lastly, the Barbarian is getting a new aspect for Ancestral Charge. Charge calls forth 4 Ancients who also charge, dealing 50 to 100% of normal damage. This could be interesting. Like, off the top of my head, I don't know how well this would work, but it does sound a bit like the Crusaders pony build from Diablo 3, where you would send out a horse, and that horse would send out a bunch of other horses, all dealing damage. However, this would make us charge with all of our ancestrals who would also deal damage with us. Could be neat for like a clearing build where you're just like dashing around hitting enemies with a bunch of these ancients and build like an ancients like utility mobility build. But yeah, off the rip, hard to tell how good that would actually be, but might open up some new possibilities for Barbarian. Who knows? It could be crazy. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Overall, Barbarian is going to be feeling a bit worse if you hop on it right now. Hoda, to be honest, felt terrible. It was really just not enjoyable to play, where I was taking really long time to kill enemies that I was not taking a long time to kill before. It is good that they fixed that. I'm just shocked that they nerfed Hoda so hard and then didn't hit it with any like quality of life or like damage improvements to kind of make up for that. I still think Whirlwind is probably going to be one of the biggest bread and butter builds for the Barbarian, with some chances, with some new buffs to the new aspects, where like Charge could be really neat, and Deathblow got some big changes. There's also some new hearts and things for like damage over time, so Bleed Barbarian could be feeling a lot better. They didn't buff any of the Barbarian's key passives, which I was surprised by. I thought they might buff some of those more key passives, because obviously the one that gives you like 135% more damage to your core skills is really strong. I don't see that meta really changing. But yeah, guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what class you plan on starting in Season 1, and I'll catch you on the next one. Guys, take care. Peace.